RotoGrinders. Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka BlenderEd, Blender HD. If you want to follow me there on Twitter, and it's Monday, so you know what we do here on Mondays. It's Mondays with McCool, James McCool, the co-author with me on the theory of daily fantasy sports. It's a 15-hour audio DFS masterclass that you can pick up at theoryofdfs.com. As always, guys in the YouTube chat, I see you there. Give me those thumbs up, thumbs in the chat. Subscribe if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. James, you're wearing a goat sweatshirt hoodie.
Yeah.
Well, I did you win yesterday? I didn't. I didn't have any Jamar Chase in my 10 lineups. I Higgins in my Kansas City stack. I played Higgins as the run back. It's not like the whole thing wouldn't have gotten there anyway in total. So I mean, to me, the stories from yesterday were Jamar Chase and Antonio Brown just quitting in the middle of the game.
So I saw some chatter in the Discord about Antonio Brown and people saying, oh man, like Antonio Brown just walking out on the team. And I thought that it was just regular Sunday tilt of like, oh, Antonio Brown isn't getting me enough fantasy points. So I literally didn't even pay attention to it until I got on Twitter at like, I don't know, 1:45 or something like that. Cause I usually I'll do models and then I'll leave the house for a little while. So I'm not sitting there looking at my phone, like sweating and stuff like that. But I look on Twitter at like 1:45 and I see that Antonio Brown literally stripped his outfit and his pads and walked off the field.
He threw his uniform and equipment into the stands.
And I was like, y'all weren't just tilting. Like, he literally, I have never seen that ever. I'm 29 years old. I don't think I'll ever see it again.
Didn't we see the defensive guy in the Bills or whatever, Vontae, whatever, like 2 years ago, quit at halftime for the Bills?
Yeah, but not
he retired,
rip off his entire uniform on the field and like insanity.
Apparently, from what I've read, from the reports, from whatever, from the coach, I don't know, that Arians asked him to get back in the game, like as far as, you know, go, like you're Antonio Brown. What? And he said no because he's injured. And Arians said, no, you're not. Get back in the game. And Brown refused. So it's like, and Arians said, if you're not going to get back in the game, then you're no longer on the team. And Antonio Brown pretty much said fine and just left. And we saw that Snapchat or whatever with Antonio Brown waiting for an Uber outside of MetLife Stadium.
I thought that it was like, before I saw any of the reports, I thought that it was because they were not targeting him enough. And he wanted all the incentives that he would have gotten if he would have been targeted and like caught all that stuff. That's what and
they were giving him the chance to. He wanted to in the game.
As logical of a situation as this is, the most logical situation and like result in my head would have been, oh, I'm going to miss out on $5 million in incentives because I'm not involved enough. I'm just going to quit the entire NFL. And it's like, I don't know, okay. That was weird, man. Weird situation. That situation and the Jamar Chase situation, definitely the storylines of the NFL week for sure.
Well, the thing with AB is that he was chalk. That's the difference. It would just been, look at that, you know, right? If he's like 2% owned or something. No, he was 6,100 with, you know, Godwin out and
Mike Evans.
Right. You're right. And that turned out to not be the case.
It never is.
Right. Then the other thing on the slate was the status of James Conner for the Cardinals. And there were mixed reports heading into Sunday morning on, you know, whenever they say this, he's a true game time decision. No one's ever a true game time decision. Right. They say that to protect the game plan. Who's game planning against James Conner? It's like, okay, he's going to run into the line 20 times for 2 yards. Like, what does it matter?
Right.
So whether or not you planned for it or didn't plan for it, well, then it wouldn't have mattered. He didn't do it. He only got 13 points. I played a bunch of lineups with Christian Kirk in the flex because Chase Edmonds 5,700. Like, not caring if I have either of them, but I was based on Chase Edmonds' projection. If Connor was out, he would have been like the second best running back play on the slate from a salary adjusted value standpoint. I mean, I prepared for it. I mean, I'm just like, I'm not going to plug him into my running back spots, but it's like, well, whoever I could always switch to so many other wide receivers that I left that in 10 of my lineups. I had like 5 lineups that I left specifically a $5,800 type of guy in the flex, possibly with, 2v2, 3v3 type of optionality, just so I could get Chase Edmonds. And we got the Connor news that he was officially inactive, and Edmonds sucked anyway, and he still only got 13 points. And we could see here in ResultsDB, I brought up the main event millionaire, which is the high stakes millionaire, the regular millie, and the play action. 32% owned the main event millie, 9% in the regular millie, and 6% in the play action. So you could see how many higher stakes, sharper players were doing just that.
Yeah,
playing a lot of Chase Edmonds. On the other side, I don't know about you, but was there a reason Jalen Waddle was disowned?
Yeah, he did well last week.
But to that extent, to get that much ownership, because that's it. When I pulled up ResultsDB, that was the other than the Edmonds thing, and also like Steven Anderson as the punt tight end over here, like the disparity between high stakes and low stakes. Like, just when I looked at Waddle, like I'm going down the list and I'm seeing this the yellow on this side, going, who the hell's this? 9% here, 18 and 19% Jalen Waddle. Yeah, I'm like, it was 6,700. Like,
I only had him projected for 9% ownership, 10%, I guess.
Right, which is what he came in on the main event million.
Yeah,
but I mean, I didn't have him projected that well. I didn't have him projected that well. I mean, just like in comparison to other players, like I had my aggregate had him at 14.89.
Yeah, I had him at 15.4. So
right, yeah, and then the average owners, 9% ownership or so.
Yeah. So I don't know what that situation was about. I'm going to assume that some big player in the industry wanted to tout Jalen Waddle, I guess. I don't know. That's the only way that I can think of that ownership jump. Recency bias plus him projecting okay. Who did Miami play?
Tennessee. Yeah, the pace of that game was like one of the lowest on the entire slate.
I'm trying to.
He got 7 in the game yesterday. He got 7 targets. He went 3 for 47. But I could seeing 12, 11, 10, 9. I mean, it's not like Jalen Waddle's like bad or anything. It has nothing to do with that. Just that.
No, I think he was appropriately priced. He wasn't a value.
Right, he wasn't a value. Right. I mean, but even in just raw points, I had like guys like DJ Moore and Jacoby Myers, and maybe not Jacoby a little. I had Hunter Renfrow, Michael Pittman. I had like guys that were like almost 1,000 cheaper, projected either the same or slightly higher.
Yeah.
Than like Antonio Brown, I had higher.
Yeah.
Just in raw points than that. So that's the only looking at that going, I don't know where that Waddle ownership came from. I mean, it's not like I played any of them. It's not like, I played Jalen Waddle expecting him to be low owned, 9%, and he came in at 18 and I made a mistake. It's just like, dude, I didn't even have any players in that game.
What did AJ Brown come in at?
AJ Brown, let's see. 7%, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, around what I expected.
That's insane though. Like AJ Brown is 7,200, Jalen Waddle is 6,700. It's about $500 difference. Like I had them basically projected the same, but I would have thought that people would have been more on AJ Brown than.
Well, even Higgins. Look at Higgins. Higgins was 11% in the million.
Yeah,
and look at the game he had last week. I mean, so like why Waddle?
It had to have been like ETR or
No, but it was. I'm telling that what if I'm asking you, that means it's not
that's
anywhere.
True. No,
that
you're right. You have
right,
all of that. Yeah.
right.
I don't know where it came from. It's weird.
Right. That's why I'm asking. Like
Yeah,
there's a certain thing. Like I understand Braxton Berrios being owned. Right. I mean, he projected. I mean, most of this is projection. Devin Singletary.
I saw Braxton Berrios ownership after the first touchdown, and I was flabbergasted at 30+% ownership.
Well, that was in the main event Millionaire. It was only 22% in the million.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the power sweep. Like
30, power sweep. Yeah, would be similar to the 30.
He ran like God last week and had 15 fantasy points. And so to have him at 30+% owned, I had none, by the way, 30+% owned. And like after running like Jesus last week and getting only 15 fantasy points, I was like, oh man, this is fantastic. I'm so happy about this fade. Fast forward 17 minutes or something like that, and he has 2 touchdowns already and like 5 catches. I'm like, all right, that can end my week, and that's fine. But my God, I'm happy about fade.
I had him under owned at 30%.
I think that he projected fine. I had him project for 13 fantasy points. He projected fine, but I didn't think that I needed him in any of the lineups that I built. He was fine, but I did not think that he was a necessary. I did not think that he was 30% owned necessary.
No, I agree. It depends on your construction. But if you needed a cheap receiver, there was no other cheap receiver that I was going to play other than him.
And he probably was played with a lot of Antonio Brown, right? As a
right. Of course. I mean, I played like Brady plus Brown plus Gronkowski plus Berrios. I mean, that's literally one of my lineups.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll bring it up on the screen. Right
it's
here.
Your best lineup. Yeah.
Right. It's my best line. I played a bunch of Jared Paris and that worked out at 4,800.
I nailed running backs this week. I was happy about that. But
well, you had Penny. Penny was the only running back I didn't play. I just didn't even bother.
I had both David Montgomery and Rashad Penny in all three of my lineups. I had one with Sony Michel. I had one with who else did I play?
Like the thing about Rashad Penny in the late games was that like once Chase Edmonds was there at 5,700, like even if I had him, even if I started with Rashad Penny, I would have went down and played Chase Edmonds because I had Chase Edmonds projected for higher than him as it was. Yeah, knowing that late swap, the late news will make him even lower owned.
Yeah, I had Rashad. I didn't have Rashad Penny projected super duper well. But I knew going into that game, it's like I thought that it was weird that the Seahawks were only 8.5-point favorites anyway. I thought that it was weird that he wasn't going to be higher owned than he was. Like I had him projected at 14% ownership, or no, not 14. What I have him at? I had him at 7% ownership, projected for 7%. I thought he should have been way higher than that. I thought he should have been in the same like realm at least as David Montgomery and Ronald Jones. So I just thought that he was a really, really, really good play after the workload that he's been getting up against the hapless Lions, who ended up actually putting up a lot of points, which is annoying. But I was really, really surprised at his ownership. There were a couple spots, like I mentioned in my article, that you could certainly play the chalk running backs. There was nothing wrong with playing Jonathan Taylor, Alvin, or Sony Michel, David Montgomery, or Ronald Jones. There was absolutely nothing wrong with playing those guys this week.
Well, out of the three, the one that I was the least interested in was Ronald Jones.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. But of those four, like I'm fine if you want to play any of those guys. I have no problem with any of those guys. But I didn't think they were necessary either. Like on a 14-game slate, there were so many pivots. I had Rashad Penny, Darrell Williams, Josh Jacobs, Eli Mitchell, DeAndre Swift, like all these guys projected just fine, like right there with all the chalk. And you really did not need to go with the chalk. That being said, I knew that I was going to be different with my stacks, so I didn't have much of a reason to fade David Montgomery, who I liked. I didn't have much of a reason to fade Sony Michel, who I liked. I could have gone Darrell Williams. I could have gone Josh Jacobs. I thought about both of them, but when it came down to it, it was like, okay, I don't really care that much about running back ownership. There's not going to be a lot of leverage gained on any of these guys. So I might as well just go with the ones that project well and not worry about ownership.
Right. I mean, I just built around my stacks, and in lineups that I didn't like, if I didn't have Antonio Brown, if I didn't have Cup, if I didn't have Berrios or something in that line, it's just like, why not just have David Montgomery and Sony Michel in my running backs?
Right.
I mean, like, just, I mean, if you go down some of my lineups, like here, like I use Patterson as kind of the pivot. See, look, this lineup has Cup, Brown, and Berrios.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'm not going to play Sony Michel. I mean, I'm playing a Ram stack against Sony Michel, right? So I'm playing Higbee, Cup, Stafford. Yeah. So then you play Jared Patterson there, and you correlate the Washington football team defense with Jared Patterson, right? Here's one Sony Michel, Darrell Williams. So this one wouldn't have David Montgomery in it, and this one is Patrick Mahomes, Darrell Williams, Travis Kelce, and T. Higgins, not Jamar Chase, as the run back here.
Yeah, saving
that spot for Chase at this could have been anyone, but Chase Edmonds, 9% own Chase Edmonds. To me, give it to me. I mean, just like he should. That Chase Edmonds, if you knew exactly that Connor was going to be out before lock, should have been as owned as Sony Michel and David Montgomery. Mm-hmm. So like getting a 9% Chase Edmonds, like just give it to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I didn't rerun things after the news came out, just because I let people know, like, if Chase Edmonds in, he's going to be a good play anyway. But I was already high on David Montgomery, Rashad Penny, and Sony Michel, and with those guys, again, I didn't think that it was necessary to try to work in Chase Edmonds. Chase Edmonds was going to project the same as those guys, so it just kind of came down to. For me, I focus a lot on running backs that are large favorites that I think are going to be in a winning game script, stuff like that, yada, yada, yada. David Montgomery fit that bill perfectly. Rashad Penny fit that bill perfectly. The only one I might have gotten off of was Sony Michel, and that's why I only had 2 lineups with Sony Michel instead of 3. I could have seen going to Chase Edmonds instead of Sony Michel, but like I was sold on David Montgomery and Rashad Penny.
Well, the thing about Chase Edmonds is that I know his ownership wasn't going to be reflective.
Right, and
that's what it came down to me. I have to side with the guy that's more dramatically underowned than other guys. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could make the case that David Montgomery is. I mean, David Montgomery came in at like 26% on the milli. You could say that could be a little bit underowned, actually.
Yeah,
based on his workload and going against the Giants like that. But like, I'm not going to pass up on a 9% owned running back that should be 20+% owned. So like whatever happens. It's not a results oriented thing. It's just like, right. Oh, that could have been Rashad Penny. Well, you could have been, but am I going to play a 14% owned Rashad Penny over a 9% owned Chase Edmonds? No. Rashad Penny probably should be 14% owned. Chase Edmonds should be 25. Chase Edmonds probably should be 6,800 or 7,000 in this spot, and he's not. And I just live with whatever I live with. I mean, Cooper Kupp really technically didn't really get there. He got 21 points, but for 9,500, that ain't getting there.
Same with
Jonathan Taylor, 21 points, really didn't get there either.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that Chase Edmonds was not underowned by any means. I just, like I said earlier in the pod or in this video, I didn't think that the leverage was gained through running backs. I thought running backs were fine. Chase Edmonds was a very good play and a very good game theory play. And like, we should hammer that home for those watching, that it was a very good idea to prepare for that situation with James Conner and Chase Edmonds. We saw what happened with Chase Edmonds last week when James Conner ended up not being able to play. It is a good idea to do exactly what Jordan did and use somebody like Christian Kirk in the flex. That was a very smart decision, so that you could make sure that you could swap if you needed to. It also depends on what your lineup looks like as well. If you have a whole bunch of chalk in your lineup, then certainly you don't want to take Sony Michel. You'd rather take your shot with Christian Kirk with that late swap with Chase Edmonds. Or you could just play Amon-Ra St. Brown and just win everything.
Right. You take a 6K player from the Lions. Right. 10 targets, 8 for 111 with a receiving touchdown and a rushing touchdown.
Yeah, I don't really know what to say about the Lions. That was impressive with Tim Boyle at QB. That was impressive.
Well, maybe it's more of a byproduct of the Seahawks defense.
Well, that too, and Pete Carroll just like laying off the gas, but
right, yeah, they're playing like prevent defense or whatever. Just like we're up by 4 touchdowns. Feel free to do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, which is frustrating, but it is what it is. I mean, that's one of the reasons why you play that game sack correlation piece, so that like if a team gets up big, if you have a Seahawks stack, then you bring it back with another wide receiver, so that when they're playing prevent defense, you get garbage time. That's the entire thesis behind that.
Sean George asked, how did you guys approach Trey Lance? I played him in cash games, but I didn't have him in any GPP lineups.
I would have played him in cash games, but I would not have had him in any GPP lineups. Totally agree. I think that that Trey Lance and GPPs really affected more how you felt about Eli Mitchell than it felt how it affected your thoughts on Trey Lance. Because Trey Lance is so much more of a runner. He has limited in his last start, he limited Eli Mitchell's workload quite a bit. So that typically I think that Eli Mitchell is somewhere around a $7K or $7,500 running back. This week, I did not think that because Trey Lance does get around 25% of the rushing yards. So Trey Lance, I thought he was obviously the de facto cash game quarterback. There was nobody else that you were going to go with, but not in GPPs. I thought he was a great fit in GPPs.
Well, in GPPs, he was truthfully, if you wanted to stack him, that would have been the weirder way to play him, because we could take a look here. Trey Lance in the Millie was 23% owned,
which is insanity
for a quarterback. But you'd figure at 23% ownership, it's like, well, let's take a look at Debo, 5% owned. Let's look at Ayuk, 1% owned. Let's take a look at Kittle, 4% owned. So it's like,
yeah,
how many Trey Lance what is it? 18% of all lineups in the Millie were Trey Lance naked lineups, which if you want to play that, that's fine. But if anything, the problem with the 49ers is that like everyone else didn't project well. I mean, I know that you got some responses on Twitter for a take of certain types. Trey Lance, maybe I view Trey Lance is very similar to Jalen Hurts, right?
Sure.
Like similar in that from a DFS, from a fantasy perspective, like Trey Lance is like Jalen Hurts, someone that runs the ball, not the most efficient passer, right? Plays for a team that runs the ball a lot as it is, so the volume is low.
Yeah.
But guys like Debo and Ayuk and Kittle would project so much more better with Jimmy G.
Oh yeah,
behind center than with Trey Lance.
Yeah, well, especially Debo. It has been hell trying to project Debo for my projection system, because the majority of his fantasy relevancy has come from rushing touchdowns. So like when you try to project him with a quarterback that's going to take the rushing touchdowns and you're like, oh, I'm going to give Debo just receiving work this week. It ain't pretty, because Debo Samuel has a good ADOT. It's like 12 or something like that, but he's been getting so little receiving work that game plan has been very, very odd for my projection system to try to handle. So he didn't project especially well. George Kittle did not project especially well. We're talking about the 49ers who have like a 39% pass rate in the red zone, which is by far the lowest in the league. It's super, super, super low. So you have to expect that the majority of their fantasy points are going to come from the rushing game. So Debo gets a little bit of that, maybe like 15% of the rushing touchdowns. But you have Trey Lance, who has probably about a quarter of them. You have Eli Mitchell, who has likely 65% of them or something like that. And then George Kittle, maybe 40% of the receiving touchdowns or something like that. But when they're only projected for like 1.2 receiving touchdowns, there's not enough to go around. Those guys aren't going to project well.
I understand if you played Trey Lance naked at 4,800, as long as you like stacked. Essentially, what you're doing is you're building a lineup to stack a game and then replacing the quarterback with Trey Lance.
Yeah,
and then shifting whatever you shift.
Right.
I would naked Trey Lance and then a whole bunch of one-offs. It really comes down to like, let's say you play, taking a look at the quarterbacks. Like, let's use Josh Allen as the better example.
Sure.
Let's say, okay, I'm going to play Josh Allen plus Singletary plus Beasley or something like that. And you're like, well, I'm just going to replace Josh Allen with Trey Lance. And then now I can play Jonathan Taylor in the running back spot. It's like you're still, and then you also have like Russell Gage in that lineup or whatever from Atlanta.
Yeah.
But essentially you're putting in the game stack that you want, the main piece of the lineup, and then you're replacing the quarterback. It's not saying that Josh Allen is that Trey Lance is going to outscore Josh Allen, but in the comparative, the $3,200 difference in price, Josh Allen puts up 32 and Trey Lance puts up 26. You may rather have Trey Lance in the lineup and Jonathan Taylor's 42, assuming he got there, than having Josh Allen's 32 and Sony Michel's 20 in your lineup. So it comes out that way. But it's not that, to me, when it comes to naked type quarterbacks, like I'm not just treating it, it's like, oh, well, I'm not stacking this lineup at all. It's like if I had Trey Lance in the lineup, you could play Brandon Cooks on the other side.
Yep.
The Trey Lance, Brandon Cooks, and then play a 2+1 of another game. So you're just playing two guys from the same team without their quarterback because you have a cheap Trey Lance in there already.
You're basically building a secondary correlation with your quarterback and another wide receiver.
Right. But I think a lot of people in large field GPPs go wrong with like, oh, I'm playing a naked quarterback, so that means my lineup doesn't have to have any correlation. It's like, no, you would still benefit from correlation. So especially when a lot of people that do use naked quarterbacks play like these, like I'm just going to play 9 slots and hopefully I get lucky in all these one-offs. Like it would benefit you more. Remember, when it comes to correlation, you're not doing it for the sake of correlation. You're doing it. You're playing well-projected players that happen to also correlate to each other, right? So a lot of people go wrong by, well, I'm just going to correlate like 5 different guys in my lineup, and they include 3 guys that project poorly. But I got correlation. Why didn't I win? Why aren't I placing lineups well? Well, because you're sacrificing too many points for the sake of correlation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's why, like, I take a look through my lineups. I'm not playing poorly projected players. And the more poorly projected players that I'm playing, the more that I have to play higher. But like, if I'm playing a Dallas stack, for instance, and I had one of them. Let's see, go to my Dallas lineup. Lamb and Cooper really were meh on DraftKings. So it's like, okay, if I play Prescott, who projected well, but Lamb and Cooper didn't. It's like, okay, well, this lineup, in order for me to raise my projection, I could put Montgomery and Sony Michel in the lineup. I put Braxton Berrios in the lineup. I'm running it back with Zach Ertz, one of the higher projected tight ends that correlates with that. At the end of the day, I left DeAndre Swift in here in the Lions defense. But the main thing is that I'm not putting Lamb and Cooper in and then going, well, then I'm just going to not play Montgomery either. And I'm not going to play Michelle. It's like, well, I'd be sacrificing so much projection for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, like, in lineups where it's like, oh, you're playing Kupp, Brown, and Berrios in your wide receiver slots. Like, that's when it's like, okay, now you get Garrett Patterson and now Tyler Higbee at tight end. Right? A very different defense, because you're taking on too much ownership here, but you're correlating, right? Stafford, Kupp, Higbee. But you're not playing poorly projected players for the sake of correlation. Like, even though, like, my worst lineup, Michael Carter, Jared, say I played 2 sub 10% running backs because I was playing Brown and Kupp in my lineup.
Yeah.
Right? Now, this lineup didn't do all that well, and I started changing stuff here. Michael Pittman. Yeah, I tried to play secondary correlations of the Colts Raiders game. It's like Moreau, Pittman, Renfro. I could have gotten Zay Jones, but I only played 10 lineups. I would have possibly had more of him. Only because it was in what? It was a game. It was an indoor game, right? I mean, like, you never know.
Well, the Raiders are super pass heavy too.
Right. And it was one of the lower owned games.
Yeah. Yeah. Overall, I mean, I think that people hear correlation so much when it comes to baseball and when it comes to hockey and in esports as well. If you come from the esports side of things, like League of Legends is all about correlation too. I think that people start looking at those event-oriented sports and they kind of try to carry over that idea of correlation into something that is less event-oriented, like NFL. And they kind of get lost in the woods there a little bit. And
it still applies to baseball, though. It still
applies to baseball,
but not as much. Like we're typically not having the conversations of how much does this extra batter added to your stack is worth the correlation. It's just you're playing team. You're more likely to win by just playing teams in MLB than you are in NFL.
Well, and projections matter significantly less in event-oriented sports.
Right.
They still matter, but like they don't matter near as much because it is
one swing of the bat could be 14 points.
It's so volatile and so variant when it comes to event-oriented sports. And if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say event-oriented versus non-event-oriented, we talk about it a lot in the course, but Theory DFS, that is, that there are kind of two different splits between DFS sports where you have event-oriented sports and non-event-oriented sports. And event-oriented sports are where there's a large swing of fantasy points based on one event, right? So a goal in hockey is a large event that can affect your lineup in a significant manner. A home run in baseball affects your lineup in a significant manner. Whereas in NFL, we have touchdowns, which are events, but they're only worth 7 points if it's a receiving or rushing touchdown, 4 points for a passing touchdown. And those don't really, like, they matter, but they're not going to swing your lineup as drastically as 14 points from a home run. So that's what I mean when I say that. And so correlation.
And the thing I also explain that the non-event driven, so like basketball would be iterative scoring. There's nothing that any player could do in the span of one play that could get them 20 fantasy points. Like there's like they could get a steal for 2 points and a 3-pointer for 3.5. I mean, like,
yeah.
But players are scoring a 40, 50 fantasy points. So one event, they have to rack up a series of events. That's the main reason why, this guy's only going to play 12 minutes off the bench. It's like, it's almost unplayable. Like, how are they possibly going to score that many points in 12 minutes in basketball?
Right.
You take the fourth wide receiver on a football team could catch one pass for 80 yards and make value in literally one event. And the eighth hitter, the crappy eighth hitter, still probably hits 2 or 3 home runs a year, and 14 points, 16 points, 2 doubles or something. Like in one swing of the bat, like a cheap crappy guy could still put up that many points. In basketball, that doesn't happen. In golf, right? You can't hole in one counts for a bunch of points, but at the end of the day,
a lot of points. Like relatively, it doesn't count for a lot of points relative to what finishing scores happen in PGA.
Right.
Nothing.
But there's no golfer. It's not like your golfer's heading into the 18th hole, right? And you're down by 30 fantasy points. There's nothing that golfer could do to help it. Like wow, he's going to score 2 points. I mean, like even if he gets an eagle, like the plus 4.
Well,
like,
if it's an eagle that puts him into first, that does. But like
but even if going from second to first may only give you an extra 5 points as it is also.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm just saying that there's no big. You're not going to sit there on Thursday in golf and go, no, this guy, no cash. I mean, like there's like as you could in baseball, the third inning, guy comes up for his second at bat. It hits another 3-run home run.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like what does he own? It's 7% up. You ain't winning without him.
Yeah, you're dead.
Right? Either you have that team stack or you have him as a one-off, and you might as well close your laptop. Basketball you can't do 5 minutes into a basketball game. There's no like, This guy's going on a run. He has 14 fantasy points on his first shift. Like, okay, we've seen tons of times they have 14 points in the first shift and ends up with 18 at the end of the game.
The only time in NBA that I've ever felt that I was actually dead after like 5 minutes of somebody's shift, it was this year. It was TJ McConnell when he had like 6 steals or something in the first, and he was coming off the bench and he was like 5% owned or something like that. He ended up with a double-double with steals. And I was just like, after 6 steals in the first, you're dead. You're dead if you don't have him. Because he was like 3,500. He already had like 24 fantasy points. In large field, you're dead. But for the most part, exactly right. That in NBA, there's very little that can happen in 5 minutes to where you're like, oh yeah, I can't win this without him.
Or that you have someone that you need to have.
Right.
Right. It's like, in the first half, this $4,500 guy has 26 fantasy points.
Yeah.
You're like, nope, no one's going to win without him. And then at the end of the game, he has 40 fantasy points, which is still great, which, hey, for 4,500, that's doing really well. But it's still not, depending on the size of the slate, he may still not end up in the winning lineup.
Yeah. Well,
right. Now, if he's 70% owned, and he puts up 65 points at 4,500, like, yeah, then you're probably dead at that point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this year, everybody is scoring 50 fantasy points off the bench. So it doesn't even matter. Like,
well, everyone's also 3,500. I mean, they're just adding people to the player pool and just going, we don't know who these guys are, but they're going to be playing 32 minutes. Feel free to play them at 3,200.
I am done playing NBA DFS also this year. And the reason for it is Facundo Campazzo. He put up 61 fantasy points the other day. 61 fantasy points. He's like 75% owned. And I had him as my best projected like value. I am not saying that I projected him badly, but I projected him for like 30 or something. And like when Facundo Campazzo is putting up 60 fantasy points, I'm done. I can throw.
Well, you projected him for 30 but I mean, that's still like 8x's. His price.
So he's still top overall projected player,
right?
Like, in terms of value. But those kind of situations, man, that's the kind of thing that happens in March NBA. And I haven't played NBA in March in 3 years because I hate it. And like when that kind of stuff is happening in January, or no, that was like the end of December or something like that. Like that's just, I don't even want to know what March is going to look like. That's going to be a nightmare.
Sean George in the chat, Sean, I've discussed this numerous times. Obviously, you could go back to probably 100 of the shows in order to get the answer to this question. But I will spend the time to answer this as I've answered this probably 400 times this season. The higher he asks, can we go back and forth, blah, 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 blah. But my initial question was, with the higher expected score needed to win the contest, are you less likely to game stack? The larger field, the larger the GPP is, the closer you need to come to the nuts. The highest possible score. The smaller the contest, the lower score you'll likely need, right? Because you're competing against less lineups.
Less competitions.
Right. So in larger field contests, getting the one-offs, getting this guy went off in this game, that guy went off in this game, that guy, getting all of them is going to be more valuable because you're competing against 100,000 lineups of people throwing stuff against the wall that someone will have a combination of a bunch of them. So you taking 5 plus 3 from one game, unless that game goes for 110 points, most likely the highest scoring wide receiver, running back, tight end, quarterback is not all going to be from the same game. So in a large field contest, the one-offs, having Jamar Chase as a one-off is much more important than having a Chiefs Bengals stack. Right? Because there's more lineup combinations. In smaller field, the winning score may not, there are times where the highest scorer on the slate is not even in the winning lineup in a small field contest, right? Depending on the ownership. It's quite possible that Jamar Chase in some of the smaller field contests yesterday, I'm talking about smaller field, under 1,000, under 500. Jamar Chase may not even have been in the first place lineup.
No, I
At
think
like
also
3% ownership, because you have to get all the other spots right also to some extent. So in smaller field contests for NFL, for anything, I mean, the correlation increases the variance of your lineups. But it also, depending on the sport, could lower the variance it could lower the ceiling of your lineups. In a game like NFL, in a game like NBA, the difference is that in MLB, it doesn't, because the batters can never be negatively correlated to each other. In football and basketball, players are negatively correlated to each other. If David Montgomery scores a touchdown, that's a touchdown taken away that Darnell Mooney could score, right? And there's a time limit on the game, right? So when they score, they give the ball to their opponent. So it's not like, if you score, you get the ball back, and then you can go forever. So in football and basketball, if Steph Curry takes a shot, his teammate can't, or Wiggins can't have a shot also. In baseball, unlike those, the baseball game could technically go on forever, right? So one bat, like the leadoff batter and the second, all the batters on the team are positively correlated to each other, and they can't possibly be negatively correlated. Now, obviously, someone off the bench could be negatively correlated. I mean, obviously, a platoon hitter, but I'm talking about anyone in the starting lineup they can go on forever. The team could score 700 runs. There's nothing that necessarily prevents that from happening. So thinking in terms of, well, should I play this guy as the five? Should I play a 4-man stack or a 5-man stack? The correlation can only be pretty much good for you. I mean, why not? At the two guys at the same price, at the same ownership, at the same value, one is more correlated to your lineup and one is less not correlated to your lineup. Play the correlate. In baseball, why not?
Yeah.
You can only benefit from it. That's why you see in MLB that in large field and in small field, most people are just playing teams, not playing, 1-1-1-2-1, types of lineups, and trying to get a 9 batter parlay of, home runs or something.
Home run parlays, man.
Right. But in NFL, I mean, I've explained this 700 times. So the larger the field contest, the closer, the higher score you'll probably need. Okay. And how do you get to the highest score possible? By getting all the one-offs right. So does that mean you can, and then this is the reason why I've explained it in previous videos, and why I always have to say this now, because someone's going to watch and then they're going to ask stupid questions. They go, oh, so that means you can never do that. Like, anytime you're using the word always and never, that means you've asked the stupid question. How I saw a contest where a sharp player played a 4+2 lineup in a large field contest. Don't you say that's bad? And then, of course, James, the 4-2 lineup, it consists of, because of someone being out in that game, like 5 guys from the game. Like, they're all the highest projected players also. It's like, yeah, because you didn't have to give up much projection in order to get that. So why can't you play a 4+2? As long as the players from the game project well. Same thing we see in basketball, right? Oh, how many players from the same team can you play? Well, it depends on the salary of those players, right? It depends on how many minutes. It depends on how they project versus their salary, right? If everyone's underpriced, so everyone's 3K, you can probably play 5 of them. If everyone's efficiently priced, you're probably not going to play more than 1 or 2. Probably maybe 1, maybe 2, because they're going to be negatively correlated to each other, but at efficient prices. So that's the key here. It's like, what players are priced inefficiently? The more there are in a game, why not play them? Why? If I'm going to choose between 2 players that same ownership, same projection, same everything, I can only benefit from having players from the same game. So why not do it? The question comes in on, do I play the guy that's correlated, or do I play the guy that's not correlated, that's 0.7 points higher median projected than the one that is correlated? Well, the question isn't do you or do you not? The question is, do you believe 0.7 points median is worth the correlation? That's it. Hence why you probably shouldn't. I could play this guy or this guy. One guy projects 17 points lower than the other guy, but is more correlated. Well, don't play. Who cares if he's correlated? You're not going to make up 17 points in NFL for the sake of when we talk about correlation, we're talking about boosting the overall lineup by 3%, right? Stuff like that, James. But I always hate answering these questions over and over and over again, because then people. Oh, so in large field, I never do it. In small field, I just take a game and I play 9 guys from the same game. And it's like it depends on the projection of the players and the salaries of the players. Mm-hmm. There are 700 variables in DFS that you have to weigh in order to build your lineups. Some are more important than others. So go weigh them and try to weigh them in your head, and you'll find out that having a tool to do it for you, having math to do it for you, is probably more efficient and probably more accurate than you trying to do it in your head.
And even if it's not more accurate, even if you're the best mental, like tangible thinker on the planet, definitely more efficient. Definitely more efficient with your time, because the model just does it in like half a second, and you have to do it in more than half a second. So,
taking a look at the main event Millionaire, I don't think Osimo did not have Jamar Chase.
Yeah,
it was a 2,268 entry contest, and he did not have Jamar Chase in his lineup anymore.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention, was that Osimo did indeed win without Jamar Chase because it was small field and he did not need the nuts. Didn't need it.
Right, 214 points scored in winning lineup in this contest. We go to the regular Millie, which is obviously 177,000 entries. Right, 214 isn't even in the top 100 scores. Right, 251, and of course that was obviously Burrow, Chase,
and Darrell Williams,
Braxton Berrios. I don't even think Osimo had Braxton Berrios in his lineup. Nope. Really contrarian lineup outside of David Montgomery. Wilson, Metcalf, Lockett.
Brought it back.
Amon-Ra St. Brown, run back. Oh, I also had Rashad Penny, super stack. Right.
Wow.
Basically took why not take the entire Seattle offense? Essentially, that's this. I mean, other than what, Gerald Everett or something, that's the whole Seattle offense.
Yeah.
And you're betting on the fact that Seattle puts up 45 points. You know what happened?
They put up
45 points. But this lineup wouldn't have even cracked the top 100 in the regular Millie.
No.
He overcourt, right. He played a 4+1. Ricky D here. Trey Lance with Brandon Cooks. A whole bunch of one-offs.
But a whole bunch of high-owned one-offs.
Yeah, but you get different with Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah.
Looking through some of these. Whistles go woo. So yeah, look. Cincinnati. Right. Burrow, Chase, Higgins.
Mm-hmm. Rex Burkhead. Michelle. I mean, this is a fairly chalky lineup. Oh, DJ Moore was 13% owned in that?
Yeah. But this is a fairly chalky lineup, other than basically Chase and Burkhead.
Yeah.
Because it's a small field contest. So, I mean, you don't have to get as much leverage in these contests.
You need 2 guys to be less than 10% owned, and you're fine.
Right. That's about it.
Basically, just treat it like an NBA lineup. But that's a wild lineup from Osmo. Tyler Higbee to kind of combat the Sony Michel chalk.
Or just whatever fits. It's at that point, I think it's just whoever fits in the tight end spot. That's all that matters.
Oh, I mean, Tyler Higbee. It's not like Tyler Higbee was cheap.
Right. Tyler Higbee is also technically leverage off of Michelle and Cup. Right. If Higbee has a big game, it's touchdowns that would be coming out of Cup's score and coming out of Michelle's score.
Yeah, at 4K, like Yeah. I mean, maybe he had Tyler Higbee projected very, very well. I didn't. But
Hey, I am okay. I had nothing to write home about.
no,
Not poorly projected.
How many lineups did he have in that? Is that a single entry?
What, Osmo?
No, I mean the contest.
No. It's 68 max.
Okay.
Some people didn't play. I mean, most people didn't play 68, but
Yeah.
68 max at a 2,200. That's a lot of money. That's you could have entered up to $151,096 worth of entries.
So you could have gotten up to the point where you could 8x your entries.
Right.
I think that's an important point to note here. People are like, oh man, Osmo hit for $1 million. Good for him. And it's like, if you think that Osmo's bankroll is anything less than $1 million, I don't know. It's cool. I think that it's less cool when somebody like Osmo or one of the big players ends up hitting for $1 million. Just like, oh yeah, I mean it's a neat like achievement, I guess, but it's not that significant overall.
No, he showed his roto tracker yesterday.
Oh, did he? I didn't see that.
Yeah, no, he showed his roto tracker to make fun of it. The fact of like, well, this is the first time that Alex has hit $1 million.
Yeah, I know that
as a prize in a contest.
Yeah,
but he highlighted the segment in his roto tracker with the word millionaire.
Yeah.
So basically, that will only take contests that have and it showed him down like $700,000 in contests that are entitled millionaire.
Yeah.
Right. So and now he made $1 million. So it's like, well, now he's plus 300,000. Right.
Which is kind of like a boring Sunday for him anyway. So
right. But that's he finally realized his EV's there.
There you go.
That's really what it comes down to.
That's how long it takes. $700,000 in entries.
We got a new function in ResultsDB. I just looked at.
What was that?
What, this filter entries button? This was never here before, right?
I don't think so.
Right.
What can you filter with it?
Filter entries by username, by minimum points, minimum salary remaining, filter by player.
That's pretty cool.
Let's see. Can we? Okay. So what do we do? Okay, we're filtering by, let's see, Antonio Brown. And do we do Antonio Brown and Braxton Berrios?
Sure. Yeah, go for
it. Does that give us something? What does that do? Oh, and it just shows the lineups.
Yeah, it shows all the lineups that included those two. That's pretty cool.
Okay, but it doesn't give us like a percentage of it. It just shows the entries. We go to ownership tab. No, okay, we don't have that. So okay, so if we filter entries, we could also filter by obviously by username. I could just use the user quick search. But let's say minimum points. Let's say 200. Submit. So only the lineups that obviously 1 to 6. Okay. I don't know how much I'd use this. So I mean, I could always search for players here. Okay, but search for. I think maybe the combination, right? How many Trey Lance? Like we put Trey Lance here,
and Debo or something.
Like let's put or probably Kittle, if anything, because they'll use a tight end spot. Like how many lineups had Lance plus Kittle? I guess a bunch. Obviously, you're not going to see any of the lineups that like what the players' names are.
Well, I mean, it looks like anybody who used Kittle ended up using Trey Lance as quarterback.
Right.
Because Kittle's only 4% owned.
Right. But let's say we wanted to see if anyone used Kittle and Samuel. If anyone did that.
There you go.
Right. So this was the double stack. Right. Lance, Samuel, Kittle.
That was a sharp way to go about it, I think.
Only because they were low owned. Only because they were.
I was going to say it's counterintuitive.
Right. They projected horribly. 8,700 for Debo. They projected poorly. Okay, I guess there's some usefulness. I would have much preferred it if it showed the percentage, like whatever this is up here, and it showed the number of entries, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 out of 22, 27 would be X percent.
Get on it, RotoGrinders code person,
Right,
Mr. Backend guy.
Well, we're shifting over a bunch of stuff from ResultsDB with the stuff that Labs had for the contest dashboard, because obviously Better Collective now owns both companies.
Yeah.
So there's have some integration between the two. So if you Labs contest dashboard allows you to do like click bunch of name, three's 3 players, how many percentage in the contest where these 3 players played together. Here are the line, and we would show the same amount of lineups.
Yeah.
But it's just like you would see the percentage of like how many people played that exact combination of players. I just noticed. I mean, obviously because I don't check ResultsDB until the morning of and everything.
Yeah.
But since I haven't been playing NBA, so it's just been my NFL stuff. But I guess there is a new filter entries in ResultsDB.
There you go. New something to play with.
If it's worth playing with. But is there a way to reset this? Oh, okay, there. I got a reset button. Then you submit again, and then it dies.
There you go.
Now you get no entries.
There you go. Back
where are my entries? I reset it.
We have broken it. There's your bug.
How about if I go back to there and I go back to here?
Nope.
Uh-oh. I broke it. I broke it. What happened to it? It should.
All right, back in.
Oh, I have to reload it. Okay. So someone should probably fix that. Okie doke. So James, even though you're not playing NBA DFS, you're still doing NBA projections.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm doing
why do that to yourself then? Why don't you just hibernate?
For prop betting.
Okay.
So that's the majority that I'm doing right now. Because remember last week I said that I wanted to challenge myself to try to be a profitable sports bettor. So I'm challenging myself to do that. It has been good and fun, and I enjoyed a lot more in NBA DFS. So I think everybody should just be doing that and not playing DFS.
There's no late swap in prop betting.
Well, here's the thing with prop betting. So even if you are very, very good at DFS, even if you have very, very good NBA DFS projections, right? You still have to be, not only do you have to be right about a projection, like I've been doing my recaps and like every day I post over on Twitter and I post what the top 21 models were and I post how many misses I had on the slate, yada, yada, yada. Today, for instance, I had an average difference between my projection and the actual for the players of 6.81 fantasy points, which is good. I'm happy with that. But say like, for instance, I had Patrick Beverley projected for 31. He scored 37. In prop betting, I probably did pretty well with my Patrick Beverley projection, right? Like I probably did well enough, depending on what the prop was. If the prop was a bit under Patrick Beverley, then my projection of Patrick Beverley would have made me money. However, in NBA DFS, even the 37 from Patrick Beverley doesn't really matter. So putting things together in that way, I just think that with NBA DFS, you literally need to have, I mean, we're seeing scores this year that I have not seen in a while.
Yeah, because all the player pricing is inefficient because no one knows what the hell's going on from a day to day.
It's broken. It's a broken NBA DFS sport. There's 50 players to choose from every single slate. And so instead of trying to nail the right 10 of those 50 players, I can just
prop bet on all 50 of them and if you get 30 out of 50 right, you make money. Then
I have a 12% ROI and I'm happy.
Right.
I'm happy on that for the day. So I have enjoyed the process of prop betting and like we talked about last week, because we did a lot. If you guys didn't watch the show last week, Jordan and I talked a lot about sports betting and about prop markets and everything like that last week. right now, with the way that COVID is going, there's massive opportunity. If you just have your phone in front of you and somebody gets ruled out, you can just like snap. You have like 10 seconds to go to the sports book. And if you're knowledgeable about the team and if you're knowledgeable about the situation, somebody gets ruled out, you can just instantly place 1% on their overs for props before it gets pulled down. And like you automatically have EV on. So for me, from my process, that has been more fruitful for sure. I've enjoyed it more. So I certainly think that if you are not already dabbling in sports betting and like props specifically for NBA, right now is a really, really good time to get introduced to it.
People can find your models over at paydirtdfs.com.
Yeah, paydirtdfs.com. And the Discord is now free, actually. So if you wanted to come jump in the Discord as well, you can go ahead and do that. There's a link to that on the site. I'm available mostly all the time, unless I'm not wanting to deal with the tilt of NFL Sunday, in which case I'm not around. But for the most part, I'm always there. You can find all the models paydirtdfs. You can find me on Twitter at paydirt_dfs paydirt_dfs.
And I'm always in the RotoGrinders Discord and the Pet Blenders Game Theory channel. You could always post your questions in there. I get back to everyone. There's always discussion going on. We were going over that what we talked about on Friday, that game theory problem with the card game. I eventually solved it. So like what the example that we gave on Friday wasn't the question, but Alex brought it up in the Zoom call. We didn't understand why we weren't thinking in terms of frequencies. And it turns out that once you plug in one frequency, it actually makes it creates all the other ones. And that what we were being confused about during the Zoom call, you could see if you go on the channel, I explain that game theory problem. So join us there. If you're a premium member, you obviously could sign up for RotoGrinders Premium. Combo, everything, single sport. Just click on the link in the description. Get $10 off your first month. And if you want more talk like this, we got the course, 15 hours long, Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. How to think like a professional DFS player. You can get it all at theoryofdfs.com. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. We got NBA Grinders live later today on the channel and the NFL pre-lock show for Monday Night Football. Hit those thumbs ups on your way out the door. And remember, no show Tuesday or Wednesday. I'll be back Thursday here, answering your DFS strategy questions as always on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.